Hello, everyone, and welcome back to OP Live here in Dallas, Texas. We are going to be bringing you our very first Power Talk, which will be featuring Tyler Schrodt, who is the CEO of Electronic Gaming Federation. He is associated with working with some of the biggest colleges in the United States, as well as with high schools. And then we'll go to him in just a second so that he can talk about how you can also bring esports to your campus.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for giving me some of your time this morning. My name is Tyler Schrodt. I'm the CEO and founder of the Electronic Gaming Federation. And as Demas and Sam said, my job is basically running college and high school esports across the United States. So today we're going to talk a little bit about esports, specifically in the college space, some of the cool things that we can do to get things started off. If you have any more questions about this after the fact, because we have short time, feel free to come find me at any point during the event. I'll be here for the next couple of days. So just to give you a little bit of background on me, which means I need to stand back here and back. So I started off at the Rochester Institute of Technology, where I graduated with a degree in finance. And my background in esports started when I was 10 years old. So I used to be a Counter-Strike player before I moved into managing teams and organizations. And then when I was in college, I ended up working as a defense contractor and a bunch of other things so I could continue to fuel my esports habit. So I had a lot of fun, and it allowed me to start Electronic Gaming Federation in 2013. And as was mentioned before, now we work with some of the biggest colleges in the United States and state associations across the country to develop high school esports. So to give you a little bit of background as to what EGF does, our basic job is to create and maintain the infrastructure for interscholastic esports. So we spend a lot of time working with administrators specifically to help them understand what esports are, why they're important on campus, and then ultimately work with students to kind of help these programs get up and running in a meaningful way. So as I mentioned, we work both across high school and college, with the idea being that eventually you get to a point where if you're a high school student, you can go get a scholarship in college, go pro, and kind of enjoy the same type of benefits that you'd see from traditional sports. So we do that in three primary ways. The first is that we run leagues, so kind of like bringing in an NCAA analogy. We run leagues, again, for varsity programs across the country. We primarily work with Power 5 schools. We handle a lot of development, so we spend a lot of time working with administrators, looking at what competitive teams are, what educational programs look like, and even like designing facilities around the country. So. And the last thing we do is just broadcast and event production to make sure that when these teams actually get up and running, they have a really great forward step and that people get to recognize them. So the reason that we get to exist is because there are so many colleges now that offer some level of esports scholarship. There are more than 85 across the country, which is kind of like this awesome trend that we've seen. And it makes me wish that I had graduated like 5 years later, so I could have been a part of that. So to talk a little bit more about esports on your campus, there's a lot of things that we can go into, but just to keep it very light, the focus today is going to be how do you get things started and kind of where do you go from there. So the first thing that you have to do is obviously figure out what you want to do. So we talk about what's your purpose. Once you figure out whether you're starting a club for the first time, whether you're looking at how to start something new on campus or get more support for your club, all the way up to getting a varsity program, you can't ask for help if you don't know what you actually want. So once you've kind of figured that out, you start to look at, okay, how do I start to implement this program? And the first thing that you have to do is make a plan, as with anything. And the key components of that, after you've figured out what you're going for, is to figure out why this is specifically valuable to your campus and what does your esports community look like and what's your plan for getting there. So the biggest things that we find when we work with administrators is they want to know what's already happening on campus. So if you're an existing club, they want to know how many members you have, what kind of events you're participating in, all the different things that really show them that this is important for students, because you're going to find that a lot of them maybe didn't grow up in a generation playing video games, and so you're going to have to help them understand why that's important and why it's adding a lot of value to what you're doing. And then the other key component of this is figuring out who you need to bring this plan to. The biggest thing for this is usually go as high as you can. When I was doing this on my campus, the first person that we went to was the university president, and he didn't take our meeting at the time, but we kept at it, and eventually we started to find that there was interest kind of across administration. So once you've kind of figured out what your plan looks like, the next thing is to actually make this get in and do a meeting, which I will talk about on this next slide. So once you've had an opportunity to figure out who you want to go to talk to, you have to get a meeting with them. And depending on who they are, that can be super complicated because depending on the size of your university, administrators are super busy and not as accessible as they should be. So the easiest ways to look at this are, one, use your advisor, use administrators on campus that you're friendly with, and get an introduction from them directly because that will give them more credibility if you're a student. Or if you're an administrator going forward with this, it makes it a little bit easier. If you don't have any of that, sometimes it's as simple as an email. In the email, you have to focus on why they should be talking to you because, again, if they have limited amount of time, you have to show why you're valuable to show up on their campus. And if the email doesn't work, the easiest thing is literally just show up at their office and schedule a meeting with their secretary. So all those things are super important. And then once you actually get into the meeting is sort of like the most important first impression you will have when it comes to making an esports program on campus. So while you're going through this meeting, again, you have to go through this education process of why are you here, why are you talking about esports, and what do you want to accomplish? And so if you're looking at getting more resources for your club, it should be what do you want to do, what does the budget look like, how many students are involved, and ultimately where do these resources need to come from in order to continue to make that successful on campus. So as you go through those meetings, the biggest thing by the end of it is you need to leave with really hard facts and next steps. So for that means it could be the next meeting. It should be, after you presented your plan, how are you getting to whatever the next step might be, whether it's recognition for your club, whether it's getting a bigger budget, whether it's starting to have a conversation about a varsity program. And in these cases, we always say phone a friend for us specifically because we do this all the time. It can make your life a lot easier because our biggest thing is working with these administrators to help them understand not just why, but how. So for us, that means laying out these plans as to how it's going to be staffed, how it's going to be budgeted for, and ultimately what system are you going to be a part of. And once you've kind of gone through this step, this is going to be a repetition. You're going to have many, many meetings across campus for anything that you want to ask. So we're always there as a resource to help. So after the meeting, things that are also super, super important to do is to actually make sure you follow up. So if you've had a great meeting or even a bad meeting, the most key thing to the success of this continuing to happen is to make sure that you're sending emails, that you're talking to people, and that you're having a conversation that's ongoing. And then depending on what they said during that meeting, you want to reiterate that and you want to continue to work towards those next steps. So the example we use is if you're working towards a varsity program as a student that's trying to figure out, how do I go from what's, a pretty successful club into these administratively backed programs, you're going to have these introductory meetings, and then you're going to continue to have meetings with a lot of people, and you're going to have to continue to repeat this process with as many administrators in the highest levels that you possibly can to make sure that your campus eventually buys into that. And as you're working through these follow-up processes and working with people outside campus, you'll start to see people slowly change their mind. Sometimes it's something that administrators are really excited about. It happens immediately. Sometimes it takes 4 years. When I was at RIT trying to get this to happen, it literally took us until this last year to actually get things to where we wanted to go. And again, I graduated in 2013. So it can be a little bit slow, but you'll get there eventually. So the last thing that I want to leave you with so we can get back to matches, and I'm no longer standing in the way of the tournament progressing, are some of the challenges that you're going to run into. So as we're working on campuses, we see challenges across the board all the time. The biggest one is a lack of education. So again, if you're working with administrators who may be in, a little outside of the range of, again, where they might have grown up with video games, they may not understand why these are important to you as a person, but they may not also, follow what the professional scene looks like. They may not understand the amount of money that's involved, that other campuses are doing it, or that you're starting to see this trend and mitigating the risk that they might see as they're talking about esports. So in any conversation that you're having, always focus on what you're doing to educate those people, anybody that's in the room, and always assume they don't know anything, because that will help to continue building your case. And then as you continue on down, you'll find that some people just really don't like esports. We've been told that video games are the devil more than once, in a very, very serious way. So you have to expect that sometimes you're just not talking to the right person. And that's why you just keep having those meetings, keep having those conversations, and build out from there. Another thing you run into a lot is campus politics. So if you're dealing with athletics versus student affairs versus any number of other groups on campus, there's always going to be these kind of competing interests. And so your goal as the person sort of driving all this is to bring those folks together in a way that continues to move the initiative forward. And the last element of it is sometimes it's just not the right time. So like I mentioned, it took a while for us to get things going at RIT. Sometimes the budget's not right. Sometimes campus is going through a lot of different changes. And there can be a lot of issues with that. So the last element that I want to leave you with is just keep going, keep trying. And if you need help, ask. There's plenty of organizations, whether you're talking about TESPA, or League of Legends, or Collegiate League of Legends, or us, or anybody else, we're designed to make sure that you can kind of help make these successful on campus. So with that, good luck to everybody that wants to do this. If you need help, we say phone a friend, but obviously this isn't 2008, so we go with email instead, or hit us up in Discord or on Twitter. And we'll kind of work through what this whole process on campus looks like to make sure that you can go from wherever you are right now to where you want to be in the future. So thank you all so much for your time, and I'm really excited to see more Overwatch today, so let's have an awesome day. Thank you.